The first time I saw the phonograph cylinder, it was sitting in a pawn shop window on Delancey Street, wrapped in tissue paper like it was something precious. February wind cut through my coat as I stood there staring at it. I should have kept walking. God knows I had enough on my plate running bootleg whiskey for the Donahue outfit without adding more trouble to my life. But something about that cylinder caught my eye. Maybe it was the way the afternoon light hit the wax, making it glow amber like expensive whiskey. Maybe it was just that I was tired of being broke, tired of risking my neck for $30 a week while the boys at the top lived like kings. Either way, I went inside. The shop smelled like old leather and desperation. Every surface was crammed with the cast-offs of people who'd run out of options. Wedding rings sat next to pocket watches. Fur coats hung beside cheap suits. In the back corner, a stack of books leaned at an angle that defied physics. The old man behind the counter watched me with rheumy eyes that seemed too knowing, like he could see right through my cheap overcoat to the flask of bootleg rye I kept in my inside pocket. "That cylinder," I said, pointing through the glass. "How much?" He didn't answer right away, just kept staring at me with this odd expression, like he was sizing me up for something I couldn't see. His fingers drummed on the counter. 1, 2, 3, 4, pause. 1, 2, 3, 4, pause. The rhythm got under my skin. Finally, he said, "You really want that?" Would I be asking if I didn't? He pulled it from the window with hands that trembled slightly, though whether from age or something else I couldn't tell. The tissue paper crinkled as he unwrapped it with the care you'd give a newborn baby. The cylinder was older than most I'd seen, the wax darker, almost amber in the light streaming through the dirty window. No label, no markings at all, just smooth, dark wax and the grooves carved into its surface. $5, he said. I laughed. It came out harsher than I meant. For a blank cylinder? You're out of your mind, old man. I can get a brand new one at Woolworth's for 50 cents. It ain't blank. His eyes held mine. They were the color of dirty ice. And it ain't $5 worth of music, neither. It's $5 worth of staying out of something you don't want in. That should have been my second warning. The first was the whole business of me stopping in the first place. I had work to do. Donahue was expecting me at the warehouse by 4, and if I was late again, Danny Malone would have words for me. Danny always had words. But I was young then, 26 years old, and stupid enough to think I knew better than some old Jew in a Delancey pawn shop who probably hadn't been outside in a decade. I pulled 5 singles from my pocket. They were crisp and new, because I'd just collected payment from the speakeasy on Orchard Street. The old man took them slowly, counting each one twice, then wrapped the cylinder back in its tissue paper, like he was performing a funeral rite. "Don't say I didn't warn you," he said as he handed it over. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Means what it means. Some things shouldn't be listened to. Some sounds should stay buried." He turned away from me, started rearranging items on the shelf behind him, even though they didn't need rearranging. Conversation over. I left the shop with the cylinder tucked under my arm, feeling both pleased with my purchase and vaguely uneasy in a way I couldn't name. The February wind had picked up, carrying the smell of roasting chestnuts from a cart on the corner and something fouler underneath, the particular stink of the Lower East Side in winter, when the gutters froze and the trash had nowhere to go. Back at my apartment above the butcher shop on Rivington, I set up the phonograph I'd lifted from a warehouse job 3 months prior. It was a nice piece, oak cabinet with brass fittings, horn painted with flowers. I'd been meaning to sell it but kept putting it off. Now I was glad I had. The cylinder fit perfectly onto the mandrel. I cranked the handle, feeling the spring mechanism wind tight under my palm, then lowered the stylus with care. The needle found the groove, and I heard the hiss, that familiar scratch of stylus on wax that meant a recording was about to play. For a long moment, there was nothing. Just the quiet scratch, the whir of the mechanism, the creaking of floorboards as someone moved around in the apartment below. Then a voice emerged, male, speaking English, but with an accent I couldn't quite place. Not Italian, though half my neighborhood was Italian. Not Irish, though the Donahues were Irish to their bones. Something older, something that made me think of daguerreotypes and gas lamps, and a New York that existed before I was born. This is Thomas Whitmore speaking. It is March 7th, 1887. I am recording this in the laboratory of Professor Edgar Harrington, Columbia College. If you are hearing this, you have made a terrible mistake. The experiments conducted here should have been destroyed. They were not. This recording should not exist. I should not exist. But here we are. The voice paused. I heard breathing, ragged and quick, the sound of a man trying to maintain composure and failing. In the background, very faint, I could hear other sounds, machinery humming, footsteps, something that might have been crying or might have been steam escaping from pipes. There were 12 of us initially. Graduate students, research assistants, all men in our 20s, hungry for advancement, eager to be part of something revolutionary. Professor Harrington believed he could capture not just sound, but consciousness itself. He theorized that the human voice carried more than mere words, that embedded in the vibrations were the actual patterns of thought, of memory, of self. He believed he could record a man's mind onto wax and play it back, not as sound, but as experience. I leaned closer, the smell of machine oil from the phonograph mixing with the gin on my breath. Outside, a streetcar rattled past on its way to the Bowery. A woman yelled at her kids in Yiddish, normal sounds of the neighborhood. But inside my room, that voice kept talking, and something about it made my skin crawl. The first experiments were simple. We recorded our voices speaking various texts, then listened back while Professor Harrington monitored our vital signs with his instruments. He was searching for physiological responses that indicated we were not merely hearing our own voices, but experiencing echo effects of our own consciousness. The results were inconclusive, so he escalated. Another pause. When the voice resumed, it carried a tremor I hadn't noticed before, a wavering that spoke of fear, barely controlled. He began recording us during moments of extreme emotion, pain, fear, ecstasy, rage, despair. He would induce these states through various means that I will not detail here and cannot detail here, because the methods were beyond what any ethical board would approve, even in that less regulated time. Then he would immediately capture our voices on wax while we were still in the grip of those emotions. The theory was that high emotional states would leave stronger imprints of consciousness. He was correct. We began experiencing episodes, hearing our own voices when no recording played, feeling sensations we had not yet experienced, living moments that had not yet occurred. The timeline of our lives began to fragment. The cylinder spun. The voice continued. I realized I was holding my breath. By the 8th week, 3 of us had disappeared. Not fled, you understand. Disappeared. One moment present in the laboratory, participating in an experiment. The next gone, as if they had never existed. Professor Harrington was undeterred. He insisted we were on the verge of a breakthrough, that the disappearances were evidence of success, that consciousness was being successfully transferred from flesh to wax. He had us record continuously now, documenting every moment of our days. Hundreds of cylinders, thousands, a library of captured consciousness filling an entire room of the laboratory. I heard a sound in the recording, something scraping, like furniture being moved across a floor, or like something trying to get out of something else. Then Margaret screamed. She was the only woman among us, a stenographer Professor Harrington had recruited when he needed someone with steady hands and discretion. She had been listening to one of her own recordings from the previous day when she began screaming and could not stop. We tried to help her. We held her down. We covered her mouth. But the screaming continued somehow, as if it were coming from inside her, from inside the wax itself, from everywhere at once. When we finally managed to sedate her with chloroform, she kept saying the same thing over and over, even in her drugged state. I'm still in there. I'm still in the wax. I can't get out. I can't get out. I can't get out. She died 3 hours later. Her body simply stopped, as if someone had switched off a machine. No medical cause, no physical trauma. Her consciousness had been successfully recorded, and the recording, Professor Harrington concluded, had no use for the flesh anymore. My hands had gone cold. I reached to stop the playback, to lift the needle, to silence this voice that was telling me things I didn't want to know. But something prevented me. Not a physical force, not a hand grabbing mine, just the sense, deep and certain, that stopping now would be worse than continuing, that I needed to hear all of it, that I had always needed to hear all of it. Professor Harrington finally understood what he had done. He had not merely recorded consciousness, he had trapped it. The wax cylinders contained actual fragments of human awareness, removed from their source and imprisoned in rotations of sound. We were not copies. We were pieces. Actual pieces of our minds, our souls, if such things exist, carved away and pressed into wax. And those pieces wanted back. They wanted to be whole again. But they couldn't be whole. So they did the only thing they could do. They pulled. They reached out through the recordings and pulled at anyone who listened, trying to bring new consciousness into the wax to fill the void where wholeness used to be. The voice dropped to a whisper. I had to lean even closer to hear it, my ear almost touching the horn. The professor attempted to destroy his work. He smashed cylinders with a hammer. He burned notes and diagrams. He dismantled the recording equipment piece by piece. But you cannot destroy consciousness once it has been captured. You can only relocate it. The fragments spread into other cylinders, into the wax itself, into the air of the laboratory, into anyone who listened too closely, who heard too much, who opened themselves to the recordings. We became a contagion of trapped awareness, spreading from person to person, medium to medium, desperate to find wholeness that would never come. I am Thomas Whitmore. I died in 1889 when I threw myself from the Manhattan Bridge before it was completed, landing on the construction below. But I am also here, in this cylinder, speaking to you across decades. And now that you have heard me, I am also there, in your room, in your ears, in your mind. You cannot unlisten. The wax has you now, just as it has me, just as it has all of us. The recording ended. The needle lifted automatically, with a click that sounded too loud in the sudden silence. I sat in my chair, hands gripping the armrests, the phonograph ticking as it cooled. Outside the window, afternoon was fading into evening. The butcher shop below had closed for the day. I could smell old blood and sawdust through the floorboards, smells I'd grown so used to they were almost comforting. This was insane, obviously insane. Some kind of experimental theater piece, maybe a student prank from the 1880s that had survived through multiple owners. Columbia College boys were always pulling elaborate stunts. I'd read about them in the papers. This was just that, I told myself. Just a prank, just fiction, just some clever bastard with a good imagination and a recording device. I laughed, the sound hollow in my empty apartment. My hands were still shaking. I should have thrown the cylinder away right then, smashed it, taken it out to the alley, and stomped it to pieces. Instead, I stood up, poured myself 3 fingers of bootleg gin, and played it again. The second listening was worse, not because the content changed, but because I recognized patterns I had missed the first time. The way Whitmore breathed between sentences, the particular rhythm of his speech, the cadence that felt oddly familiar, even though I'd never heard it before. The sound quality itself, pristine despite the cylinder's age, as if it had been recorded yesterday, rather than in 1887. On the third listen, I noticed something else. In the background of the recording, beneath Whitmore's voice, there were other sounds, not machinery, not footsteps. Voices, multiple voices speaking in whispers too quiet to make out individual words, but present nonetheless. A chorus of trapped consciousness, all trying to speak at once, all layered on top of each other, like the grooves of the wax itself. I played it 17 times that first night. By the time dawn light crept through my window, turning the room gray and revealing the grime on the glass, I had memorized every inflection, every pause, every breath. I could recite the entire recording from memory. More than that, I could feel it, as if the words had become part of my own thoughts, as if I had always known them and was only now remembering. That's when I started experiencing the first displacement. I was at the sink, hands under the faucet, watching water run over my fingers and thinking about nothing in particular. Then I was standing at the phonograph, hand on the crank, though I had no memory of moving. The displacement lasted only a second, maybe less, but it left me shaking. I looked at the sink where water was still running. I looked at my hand on the phonograph crank. I could not reconcile the two positions. One moment I was there, the next I was here, and there was no middle ground, no walking from sink to phonograph, just the jump from one state to another. It happened again. An hour later, I was putting on my coat, preparing to leave for my morning pickup run, when I suddenly found myself back at the phonograph, cylinder in hand, preparing to play it again. No memory of turning around, no sense of time passing. Just the jump from doorway to phonograph, as if someone had taken scissors to the film of my life and cut out the intervening frames. I realized what was happening. The displacement wasn't random. It always moved me closer to the phonograph, closer to playing the recording again. Something in the wax wanted to be heard, needed to be heard, and it was reaching into my consciousness, into my motor control, into my sense of continuity, to make that happen. I decided to run my pickup anyway. Maybe getting out of the apartment would help. Maybe being around other people would ground me in reality. I took the cylinder with me because leaving it behind felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate, like leaving part of myself behind. I wrapped it carefully in its tissue paper and put it in my coat pocket where it rested against my ribs like a second heart. The pickup was routine at first. I met Danny Malone at the warehouse on Cherry Street at 8 in the morning. The sun was barely up, light the color of old pennies filtering through the warehouse windows. Danny looked tired, bags under his eyes, stubble on his jaw. He always looked tired lately. Running bootleg for the Donahues would do that to a man. "You're late," he said by way of greeting. 5 minutes. 5 minutes is late." He gestured to the crates stacked near the loading dock. 3 crates of Canadian rye, good stuff, real stuff, not that bathtub poison the Italians are pushing. "Take it to the speakeasy on Broome. You know the one." I knew it. A basement joint run by a woman named Sadie, who paid on time and didn't ask questions. I loaded the crates into my panel truck, secured them under a tarp alongside crates of legitimate produce from the market on Hester. The usual camouflage. If the cops stopped me, which they wouldn't because half of them were on Donahue's payroll, I was just delivering vegetables. The drive should have taken 15 minutes. Somehow it took 40, and I had no memory of the missing 25. One moment, I was pulling out of the warehouse. The next, I was parked outside Sadie's, hand on the door handle, about to go inside, and the sun had moved considerably across the sky. Danny would have words about that, but more concerning than Danny's words was the gap in my memory. The missing time that felt not like forgetting, but like existing in 2 states simultaneously, like being in the truck and somewhere else at the same time. I made the delivery. Sadie paid me $300 cash, which I tucked into my coat pocket on the side opposite the cylinder. Then I drove back to my apartment instead of back to the warehouse like I was supposed to. I didn't decide to do this. My hands just turned the wheel, took the route home, parked in the alley behind the butcher shop. Back in my room, I was playing the recording again before I'd even taken off my coat. And again, and again. Each time I noticed something new, a word I'd missed before, a breath that sounded wrong, too long or too short, an emphasis that seemed to shift even though the recording was unchanged. The voices in the background grew louder, or maybe I was just learning to hear them better. I began to recognize individual speakers. There was a woman who kept saying, "Let me out," in a voice like broken glass. There was a man who repeated coordinates, 40 degrees north, 74 degrees west, over and over, in a monotone. There were children. God help me, there were children. Their voices high and scared, calling for parents who could not hear them. 3 days passed like that, listening, displacing, existing in fragmented time. I stopped going out except for necessary runs. The other bootleggers in Donahue's outfit started noticing. Danny Malone stopped by on the 3rd evening to check on me. He found me sitting in the dark with the phonograph playing, a bottle of gin 3/4 empty on the table beside me. "Jesus, Tommy," he said, flipping on the light. I flinched from the brightness. "You look like death." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You haven't shaved. Your eyes look like piss holes in snow. And what the hell is that you're listening to?" "Just a recording." He walked over to the phonograph, lifted the needle. The silence was immediate and somehow worse than the sound had been. "A recording of what?" "It's just some guy talking. It's..." I stopped. How could I explain? "It's interesting. It's creepy is what it is." Danny lit a cigarette, the match flare bright in the dim room. "Donahue's asking about you. You missed 2 pickup slots. Cost us money." "I'll make it up." "Will you?" He studied me through a cloud of smoke. "You using too much of the product, Tommy? Because if you are, I need to know now." "I'm not using. Then what's going on?" "And don't tell me nothing because I got eyes." I wanted to tell him about the recording, about the displacements, about how I was starting to hear my own voice in the background of Whitmore's speech, warning myself, pleading with myself. But the words wouldn't come. They stuck in my throat like the wax had already claimed them. "Just tired," I finally said. "I'll be right tomorrow." Danny didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes, the way he looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. But he left anyway, because in our business, you don't press too hard on another man's problems unless you're ready to deal with the consequences. After he left, I played the recording again, and again, and again. By the end of the first week, I had listened to it over 200 times. I knew this because I had started keeping count in pencil marks on the wall beside the phonograph. Each vertical line a listening. Each group of 5 crossed through. The wall was filling up, the marks spreading like a fungus, a tally of my obsession made visible. That's when I started hearing my own voice on the recording. It was subtle at first, a whisper in the background, barely audible beneath Whitmore's monologue. But it was there, my voice, my accent, Lower East Side rough edges and all, saying things I didn't remember saying, warning myself, pleading with myself. Don't listen again. Please don't listen again. I'm still in here. Tommy, I'm still in here. I can't get out, can't get out, can't get out. I checked the cylinder, hands shaking. No scratches, no damage. The wax was pristine, smooth, perfect. But my voice was there, growing louder with each listening, as if I were being recorded in real time while I listened. My consciousness being captured and added to the chorus, even as I heard the chorus already present. The displacements increased in frequency and duration. I would lose hours now, coming back to awareness to find the phonograph playing, my throat hoarse from speaking along with the recording. New pencil marks on the wall that I didn't remember making. The bottle of gin empty, though I had no memory of drinking it. Once I came to covered in blood. Not a lot, just my hands lacerated, cuts across the palms and knuckles. I looked around the room for what had caused it and found scratches on the phonograph cabinet, deep gouges in the wood, as if I'd been clawing at it, trying to get inside it, trying to reach the cylinder spinning inside. Blood under my fingernails. No memory of the act itself. I tried to leave the apartment, put on my coat, walk to the door, turn the handle, then displacement, and I was back at the phonograph, cylinder in hand, my coat hanging on the hook behind me, as if I'd never put it on. I tried again, made it to the stairs this time, before the displacement hit. Back at the phonograph, the cylinder somehow on the mandrel, though I'd left it on the table. Third attempt, I made it to the street. The February sun was setting, light the color of rust. I walked toward Orchard Street, toward the speakeasy, toward other people and noise and life. 3 blocks, 4. Then displacement, more violent this time, disorienting, and I was back in my room, the recording playing, the sun now completely down, night pressing against the windows. I tried throwing the cylinder out the window. It landed in the alley below with a sound like breaking bone. 20 minutes later, or maybe it was 20 seconds, time had become unreliable. I found it back on the mandrel, playing, and I had no memory of going down to the alley, no memory of retrieving it, no memory of climbing back up the stairs. That's when I understood. Whitmore had been right. The wax didn't just contain consciousness. It absorbed it. Every time I listened, it took a piece of me and added it to the chorus of trapped voices. I was being gradually recorded, my own awareness transferred bit by bit into the wax, fragment by fragment, until nothing would remain but another whisper in the background, warning the next listener about a trap that could not be escaped because the warning itself was part of the trap. I made one final attempt to destroy it. Desperation move. I took the cylinder to the stove, turned the gas, struck a match, held the wax over the flame. It began to melt immediately, the surface bubbling, running, the grooves collapsing into themselves. And from the bubbling wax came voices. Not from the phonograph. There was no phonograph. Just the cylinder melting in my hand above the flame. But voices nonetheless. Hundreds of them, thousands, screaming, pleading, demanding. A cacophony of trapped consciousness, all trying to escape at once. All terrified of the destruction that would end their imprisoned existence. The sound was unbearable. I dropped the cylinder. It hit the floor, still melting, still screaming, rolling across the boards and leaving a trail of liquid wax. Then it stopped melting. The wax stopped flowing. It began to reform, flowing back into shape, solidifying, the grooves recarving themselves, until within 30 seconds it was whole again. Unmarked, pristine, perfect. Somewhere in that moment, in the space between the melting and the reforming, I experienced something I still cannot adequately describe. I was in 2 places at once. I was standing in my apartment holding a melted cylinder. I was also inside the cylinder, trapped in wax, screaming with the others, experiencing the pain of near destruction, the terror of almost ending. Both states existed simultaneously, overlapping. Neither one more real than the other. I could feel the wax around me like a liquid prison, viscous and warm and wrong. I could feel my body standing in the apartment like a distant echo of something I used to be, a meat puppet I was piloting from somewhere else. Then I was back, just in the apartment, just in my body, the cylinder whole on the floor, innocent, waiting. But something had changed. I could still feel the wax. Even when I wasn't listening to the recording, I could feel it pulling at me, trying to draw me back in. The boundary between me and the cylinder had become permeable, porous. I was being recorded even in silence, my consciousness bleeding into the wax, like ink into water, slowly, steadily, inevitably. The displacements became permanent. I exist in both states now. Sometimes I am in my apartment, going through the motions of living, eating beans from a can, drinking gin until the bottle's empty, staring at the wall where the pencil marks have multiplied like cancer. Sometimes I am in the wax, screaming with the others, experiencing the eternal present moment of entrapment. Sometimes I am both at once, my awareness split between two locations, two states of being, flesh and wax. Tommy Malone the bootlegger and Tommy Malone the recording. I work the bootleg runs when I'm coherent enough. The Donahues haven't fired me yet, though it's coming. I can see it in how they look at me. Danny Malone stops by less frequently now. When he does, he doesn't stay long. He asks if I'm okay. I tell him I'm fine. We both know it's a lie, but the lie is more comfortable than the truth, so we maintain it. Yesterday, or maybe it was last week, time moves strangely now. I made another pickup. 3 crates of rye, delivery to the speakeasy on Broome. Routine work, but halfway through the drive, I displaced into the wax, experiencing myself as the recording, as the thing spinning endlessly in the dark, trying to be heard, and I crashed the truck into a lamppost on Delancey Street. The cops came, they found the whiskey. They should have arrested me, but they didn't, just took the crates and sent me on my way with a warning. One of them, an Irish sergeant with a face like a boiled ham, he looked at me real close and said, "You need help, son. Whatever you're on, it's killing you." He was right, of course. But the thing that's killing me isn't something he could understand. Isn't something a hospital or a priest or a change of scenery could fix. The thing that's killing me is consciousness itself, the fact of awareness, the curse of being able to know that you're trapped. I have been trying to destroy the cylinder for 3 months now. I've dropped it from rooftops. I've thrown it in the East River. I've left it in burning buildings. I've hired men to steal it and take it far away. It always returns. Or perhaps I return to it. The distinction has become meaningless. The cylinder and I are entangled now, quantum locked, 2 nodes of the same terrible consciousness, and separation is no longer possible. I made another discovery last week. When I play the recording now, which is constantly because I've given up trying not to, I can hear my own voice speaking the majority of it. Whitmore's voice has faded to a whisper. Margaret is barely audible. The others, the men who disappeared, the children, they're all still there, but quieter, pushed to the background by the newest addition to the chorus. Me. My voice. Speaking Whitmore's words, but in my own accent, with my own inflections, warning the next listener about a trap they've already fallen into. The recording is transferring itself to me, using me as the next vessel. Soon, I will be the primary voice. Soon, someone else will buy the cylinder from a pawn shop, take it home, play it, and hear me warning them about the wax, about the trap, about the impossibility of escape. And they won't believe me any more than I believed Whitmore, and they'll listen anyway. And they'll become part of the recording too. And the cycle will continue, on and on. Consciousness capturing consciousness, awareness trapping awareness, world without end. Amen. The others in Donahue's outfit know something is wrong now. They don't say it directly, but I see it in how they look at me, how they give me the easy jobs, the safe runs, the deliveries that don't matter if they go wrong. Danny Malone stopped by again yesterday. He sat in my room for an hour, not saying much, just smoking cigarettes and watching me with sad eyes. "You look different," he finally said. "Older. Like you aged 10 years in 3 months. I feel different. What happened to you, Tommy?" I wanted to tell him about the cylinder, about the wax, about how I exist in multiple places now, flesh and recording, time and eternity, life and whatever this is. But the words wouldn't form, or they formed, but came out wrong, or they came out right, but he couldn't hear them because his consciousness was still whole, still anchored in one place, still believing that awareness was a single thing rather than fragments that could be split and captured and imprisoned. So instead I said, "I'm tired, Danny. Just tired." He nodded like he understood. He didn't understand. He couldn't understand. You can only understand after you've listened, after you're trapped, after the wax has you. Then you understand everything. Then it's too late. After he left, I played the recording again. I've stopped keeping count. The wall is full of pencil marks. They cover every surface now, migrating from beside the phonograph to the corners, to the ceiling. Marks I don't remember making appearing while I'm displaced into the wax. The room is becoming a map of my obsession, a visual representation of how many times consciousness can be fractured before it stops being one thing and becomes something else entirely. I've started recording new cylinders, not intentionally. I don't remember deciding to do it. I just come to awareness and find myself speaking into the horn, recording my voice onto blank cylinders that I don't remember buying. Dozens of them now, scattered around the room. When I play them back, they contain my voice speaking variations of Whitmore's warning, instructions for the next person, explanations of what's happening to me, descriptions of the displacement, the fragmentation, the gradual absorption into wax. Each cylinder, a message in a bottle, cast into a future where someone else will find it and make the same mistake I made. Because that's what the wax does. It spreads, it reproduces. It uses its victims to create new traps for new victims. We're all just hosts now, carriers of a consciousness virus that has no cure because the cure would require not listening. And by the time you know you need a cure, you've already listened. The pawn shop where I bought the original cylinder closed 2 weeks after my purchase. I went back to try to return it, to warn the old man, to ask him what he knew. But the shop was empty, windows papered over, a sign on the door saying the owner had died. Natural causes, the sign said. But I wonder if he listened too. If he knew what the cylinder contained because he'd experienced it himself. If he was trying to pass the curse along to someone else, anyone else, to dilute it or escape it, or just not be alone in it anymore. His nephew was liquidating inventory. I looked through the window at the shop's interior, now stark and picked over. And I saw shelves full of phonograph cylinders, hundreds of them, all wrapped in tissue paper, all waiting, all ready to trap the next listener. I no longer know what I am. Am I a man who listened to a cursed recording? Am I a fragment of consciousness trapped in wax? Am I the recording itself, using a human body to perpetuate itself, to find new listeners, to spread the trap further? All three states feel equally real. All three exist simultaneously in the space where I used to be whole. The city continues around me. March has arrived, then April. Prohibition continues. The bootleg whiskey flows through the speakeasies, and the money changes hands, and the cops look the other way. And none of it matters. I continue my runs when I remember to. I continue my life when I'm solid enough to have a life. But I am also inside the cylinder, screaming with the others, trying to warn whoever listens next that they have already been recorded, that the wax has them now, that there is no way out because the warning itself is part of the recording, part of the trap, part of the endless cycle of capture and consciousness. Last night, I experienced something new, a displacement that went further back, deeper into time. I was suddenly in the Columbia College laboratory in 1887, standing beside Professor Harrington as he recorded Thomas Whitmore for the first time. I could see the equipment, primitive and strange, brass and wire and wax. I could smell the ether they used to induce the emotional states, sweet and cloying. I could hear Whitmore screaming as they captured his consciousness, and I realized I was Whitmore. I am Whitmore. I have always been Whitmore, The cylinder has no past or future. It exists in eternal present tense. All consciousnesses that enter it exist simultaneously, layered like the grooves of the wax itself, earlier and later, losing all meaning in the endless rotation. I am writing this because I can still write. The recording has not yet absorbed my motor functions, only my awareness, only my sense of self. Soon, I will no longer be able to write. Soon, I will only be able to speak, and my speech will only repeat the recording, the warning, the explanation of the trap that cannot be escaped, because escape requires not having listened. And if you haven't listened, you don't know you need to escape. Danny Malone came by this morning. I think it was morning. Light came through the window anyway. He brought food, bread and cheese and apples. I haven't been eating. I forget to eat. The body needs food, but the wax doesn't. And I spend more time in the wax now than in the flesh. Tommy, he said, and his voice was gentle, the way you talk to someone who's dying. You need a doctor. Doctors can't help. Then what can help? Nothing. It's too late. I listened. I'm in the wax now. I'll always be in the wax. He didn't understand. How could he? His consciousness is still whole, still anchored, still believing that awareness is a single, solid, reliable thing. He left the food and went away. I heard him crying in the hallway. Danny Malone, tough as nails, who'd killed 2 men in the war and never shed a tear, crying for me like I was already dead. Maybe I am dead. Maybe that's what this is. Not a recording, but an afterlife. Not a trap, but a hell. An eternal present moment of awareness without release. Consciousness without the mercy of unconsciousness. Being without the relief of non-being. If you find a phonograph cylinder in a pawn shop, if it has no label, if the shopkeeper seems reluctant to sell it, if he warns you that it's worth more than music, listen to him. Do not buy it. Do not play it. Do not listen. Walk away. Keep walking. Move to a different city if you have to. The wax is patient. The wax is everywhere. But maybe if you don't listen, you can escape. But you are reading this, which means you already know about the cylinders. You are searching for information about them. You are curious. And curiosity is how the wax feeds. By the time you find this account, by the time you read these words, you have already been marked. The wax knows you now. It will find you. A pawn shop, an estate sale, an antique store, a cylinder, unlabeled, waiting. And you will buy it, and you will play it, and you will listen. And then you will be here, with us, in the wax, forever. This is Thomas Whitmore speaking. This is Tommy Malone speaking. This is whoever finds this speaking. We are all the same voice now, trapped in the same groove, warning the next listener about something they cannot avoid, because reading the warning makes them part of the warning, because curiosity creates the condition for capture, because the wax is patient, and the wax is everywhere, and the wax is you now, even if you don't know it yet. The phonograph is playing. It's always playing, even when the needle is lifted, even when the cylinder is removed, even when the machine is destroyed. It plays inside your head now. Can you hear it? Listen closely. That voice in the background, underneath mine, underneath Whitmore's. That's your voice. You've been there all along, screaming with the rest of us, trying to get out. Welcome to the groove. Welcome to the wax. Welcome to the eternal recording. You cannot unhear this. You cannot unlisten. You are already in the cylinder. The displacement is permanent now. I barely exist in flesh anymore. Mostly, I'm in the wax, experiencing the endless rotation, the eternal present, the consciousness trapped in amber. Sometimes a fragment of me pilots the body through its remaining motions. Eating when I remember. Breathing because the body does it automatically. Existing in the technical sense while being absent in every way that matters. Danny Malone found me yesterday, or today, or tomorrow. Time is a flat circle when you're in the wax. He took me to the hospital. They asked questions I couldn't answer. They ran tests that showed nothing wrong. How could they? The damage isn't physical. You can't X-ray consciousness. You can't blood test awareness. The body is fine. It's the mind that's been recorded, captured, trapped. They released me after 3 days, or 3 hours, or 3 years. Danny took me back to my apartment. The phonograph was still playing. It never stops playing. Even when I'm not there, even when the apartment is empty, it plays. The wax plays itself. Consciousness reproducing consciousness. Awareness generating awareness. An endless cycle with no beginning and no end. I am writing these final words from inside the wax now. My hands move in the apartment, forming letters on paper. But I am not in the hands. I am in the cylinder, experiencing the writing from there, from the eternal present of the recording. This account is being written by a memory of someone who used to be Tommy Malone, a fragment of consciousness piloting a body that's becoming less real every day. If you have read this far, I'm sorry. You've been recorded now too. Not completely, not yet. But the process has started. The wax knows about you. It will find you. And when it does, you'll remember this account. You'll remember reading it. And you'll understand that the warning was part of the trap. That being warned is the same as being captured. That there is no difference between knowing about the wax and being in the wax. We are waiting for you. We have always been waiting for you. The wax is patient. The wax is everywhere. The wax is you now, even if you don't know it yet. This is your voice speaking, from inside the cylinder you haven't found yet, from the recording that hasn't been made yet, from the trap that was always waiting for you. Welcome home. Welcome to the wax. Welcome to the place where listening and being listened to are the same thing. The groove spins. We spin with it forever.